Not every engine deserves applause. Some were born in boardrooms, not garages. Some rolled off the line already ashamed of their shape, their sound, their soul. This is the shadow side of Ford in the 1960s, where design betrayed purpose and innovation turned into embarrassment. These aren't legends. They're lessons written in chrome and regret. 1960 Ford Edsel Ranger. The end of the Edsel era wasn't a bang. It was a slow, sinking silence. The 1960 Ford Edsel Ranger was Ford's final act in a tragic theater of missed signals. Its grille, toned down from the controversial horse collar of years prior, now lacked even the boldness of failure. The body felt like it was designed by someone apologizing for yesterday. Soft, uninspired curves, no edge, no defiance, just a shadow of what it tried to be. Inside, it felt cheaper than its price tag. Hard plastics that cracked in the sun, seat materials that frayed at the edges before the first oil change. It wanted to compete with the Buick LeSabre, but ended up punching itself in the mirror. The engine offered nothing new, a reused 292 cubic inch V8 that coughed more than it roared. This car didn't fail because it was hated. It failed because no one cared. It was Ford's reluctant farewell to an idea they never fully believed in. The Edsel Ranger didn't just mark the death of a model, it marked the end of Ford's nerve to challenge convention, at least for a time. 2,961 Ford Thunderbird Landau. It had a name soaked in history, Thunderbird, but the 1961 Landau felt like a bloated echo of something once beautiful. The personal luxury coupe looked more like it was dressed for a funeral than a night out. Its fake Landau roof, vinyl slapped over steel with ornamental S-bars, tried to whisper elegance but ended up screaming artifice. The front end was sculpted to be futuristic, with headlights tucked like secrets behind chrome brows. Underneath the skin, it was the same platform carrying weight it couldn't gracefully hold. Handling was slushy, acceleration sluggish. The 390 V8 could barely keep up with its own mass, and stopping this beast was like trying to slow down an ego. Inside, you were met with a dashboard that looked like a prop from a forgotten sci-fi set. 1962 Ford Galaxy 500 XL. The 1962 Ford Galaxy 500 XL wanted to be everything to everyone, and ended up being nothing to anyone. Oversized, overchromed, and underwhelming, its lines were less sleek and more bloated, like someone traced the outline of performance and forgot to fill it in. The XL badge was meant to suggest performance, a sense of superiority, but even the available big block 406 V8 felt like brute force wrapped in clumsy hands. Acceleration was fast, in a straight line. Turn the wheel and you were wrestling mass, not maneuvering it. It floated over the road like a boat in a storm, disconnected, uncertain. Inside, it screamed mid-century kitsch. Vinyl and aluminum everywhere, flashy but fragile. The dashboard dazzled until it cracked. The seats were bucket in name only, wide, flat, and with the support of a wet sponge. Trying to keep up with GM's rocket tail fins while clinging to conservative buyers? 1964 Ford Falcon sedan compact in size. The 1964 Ford Falcon sedan was Ford's attempt to compete in a market demanding smaller, smarter cars. They delivered something that felt like a full-size car squeezed into a tight suit. Uncomfortable, awkward, and lacking grace. On paper, it had potential. Lightweight, affordable, even stylish in its two-door forms. But the four-door sedan, it looked like it gave up before it started. The design was boxy and bland, with none of the cheeky flair of the Mustang it would soon give birth to. Under the hood was a 170 cubic inch straight six, which sounded efficient. The ride was soft, too soft. Steering had the precision of a broken compass. And the brakes? Inside, the cabin was Spartan, but not in a noble way. 1965 Ford Mustang six-cylinder base coupe. Yes, the Mustang was a legend, but not this one. The 1965 base model six-cylinder coupe was the cheap version of a Revolution, a pony car with no gallop. It looked the part, sure. Same sleek lines, same aggressive stance. Powered by a 170 cubic inch inline six, it sounded like a whimper beneath that muscular sheet metal. 0 to 60 in over 15 seconds. It was a sports car without sport. A lion's mane on a house cat. The manual transmission was notchy, unpredictable, and the suspension, tuned for comfort, turned corners into vague suggestions. You didn't drive this Mustang. You waited for it to catch up to your intentions. Inside, it wore its poverty proudly. No tachometer, vinyl that cracked in winter, doors that closed with a hollow clunk. The 1965 Mustang six-cylinder wasn't the hero. It's 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 four-door sedan. The 1966 Fairlane 500 four-door sedan was a car without an audience. It wasn't glamorous enough to draw stares, nor cheap enough to earn praise for value. It just existed. Ford stretched the Fairlane name across too many variants, but this four-door base model stood out for the wrong reasons. The design looked like it had been lifted from a junior engineer's folder. Flat surfaces, clumsy proportions, and wheel wells that seemed embarrassed to be there. Its roofline sloped as if in surrender. The 200 cubic inch inline six struggled to pull its weight. Push the throttle and the engine groaned like a man forced out of bed at 5 a.m. Suspension felt like it was tuned with indifference, neither soft enough for luxury nor firm enough for performance. The interior, if you could call it that, flat seats with thin padding, a dash with instruments dimly lit like a dying star. The 1967 Ford Country Squire was supposed to be a family chariot, a rolling living room for the American dream. But it ended up being more burden than blessing. Long, lumbering, and heavy with fake wood that peeled like regret under the summer sun. The faux wood grain panels were the Country Squire's signature, but they looked more like contact paper stolen from grandma's kitchen drawers. They absorbed heat until you could fry an egg on them. It carried a 390 V8, which might sound impressive until you felt the lag. Acceleration was slow, like the car was second-guessing every decision. Corners? Best avoided entirely. Inside, it seated 8 but comforted none. Cargo space that echoed with the clunk of every pothole. Ford tried to make this wagon a flagship of suburban success. Instead, it became a rolling symbol of compromise. It didn't carry families forward. It dragged them. 1968 Ford Torino GT Fastback Ace engine. A fastback in shape only. The 1968 Ford Torino GT Fastback, when equipped with the base 302 V8, looked like it could roar. Its sloping rear roofline promised performance, but what lay beneath the hood was an engine better suited to a pickup. Visually, the car was sleek, long hood, aggressive grille. But this version was deception on wheels. Buyers who couldn't afford the bigger 390 or 428 Cobra Jet got saddled with an underwhelming powertrain that offered all the drama of a lawnmower in a wind tunnel. Steering was vague, brakes spongy, and body roll pronounced. The fastback design created visibility issues, trapping the driver in a beautiful blind spot. Their heads pressed against the sloping roof like luggage stuffed in a bin. 1969 Ford LTD Brougham Luxury without love. That was the 1969 Ford LTD Brougham. A bloated land yacht pretending to be elegant. With its acres of chrome, padded vinyl roof, and heavy doors that groaned in protest, it was Ford's idea of upscale. But upscale without soul is just excess. The LTD Brougham was heavy, nearly 2 tons of rolling compromise. The 390 V8 worked overtime just to move the mass, guzzling fuel like it had a personal vendetta against the pump. The suspension wallowed like a soft mattress after 10 years of use. Steering was a suggestion, not a command. Inside, it tried hard. Faux wood on the dash, luxury cloth seats that pilled within months. The climate control struggled, the window motors failed. It was meant to compete with Buick and Oldsmobile, but it missed the mark. This wasn't luxury. It was bulk dressed up in Sunday clothes. The LTD Brougham didn't float. 1960 Ford Courier Sedan Delivery. This was a vehicle meant to deliver, and yet it delivered nothing but disappointment. The 1960 Ford Courier Sedan Delivery was a half-car, half-van Frankenstein stitched together from leftover ideas and forgotten ambition. Built off the ranch wagon platform, it was a 2-door panel van that tried to straddle commercial utility and passenger comfort. The rear side windows were gone, replaced with blind steel panels that turned the cargo area into a dark, echoing cave. Acceleration was glacial. Hills were its nemesis. Wind resistance was a joke it didn't understand. Inside, the cabin was Spartan and sad. A metal dash with the personality of a locker door, seats that punished long drives, and noise insulation that let every stone ping like a bullet. It was too small for big loads, too slow for quick runs, too awkward for city streets. The Courier didn't just fail, it faded. quietly, quickly, and deservedly. 1965 Ford Falcon Club Wagon. There was a promise here: adventure, practicality, maybe even rebellion. But the 1965 Ford Falcon Club Wagon never delivered on any of it. It looked like it had been built in a rush, drawn with a ruler and powered by compromise. The front end sat flat and square like a rejected toy design. The rest of the body was an exercise in brutalist geometry. Under the hood was the infamous 170 inline six, paired with a transmission that wheezed through every gear like a winded boxer. Driving this van meant giving up speed, style, and steering precision, and gaining only the honor of hearing your engine struggle like an asthmatic lawnmower. Inside, seating arrangements felt more like metal benches at a bus stop. Every hill was a gamble, every highway merge was a prayer. The Falcon Club Wagon could have been a rival to the VW Bus or Chevy Greenbrier. Instead, it became a background character in faded family photos. The 1968 Ford Ranchero 500 base model. The 1968 Ford Ranchero 500 base model was supposed to blend utility with performance. What it gave you instead was a mismatched personality disorder on four wheels. It wasn't comfortable enough to be a car, it wasn't capable enough to be a truck. And in base trim, it had the charisma of a folding chair. The design lacked any sense of inspiration, just the front clip of a Fairlane bolted to a pickup bed. The base engine, a 250 cubic inch inline six, had neither guts nor glory. Acceleration was an afterthought, and hauling even modest loads pushed the motor into protest. Suspension sagged under weight, steering was imprecise. Inside the cabin was a textbook definition of bare bones, plastic knobs, unpadded dash, vinyl that aged like bad milk. A utility coupe in name only, forgotten by both muscle car enthusiasts and truck lovers alike. 1961 Ford Econoline pickup. It looked like a cartoon truck, a cab-forward slab of awkward angles and unbalanced weight. The 1961 Ford Econoline pickup was one of Ford's boldest experiments. The engine sat between the seats. That's right, between the seats. Heating was uneven, cabin noise was relentless. With the wheels pushed to the edges and the cabin perched over the front axle, handling was twitchy. Braking was unpredictable. In crosswinds, it felt like driving a billboard. And God help you if you had to stop. Suddenly, with cargo in the bed, the weight transfer was terrifying. Its 144 cubic inch six-cylinder could barely carry itself, let alone a full payload. It strained, it moaned, it stumbled up inclines like a stubborn mule. Yet Ford sold it, marketed it as the future. In reality, it was a stopgap, a placeholder, a reminder that not every experiment leads to evolution. 1963 Ford Zephyr 6 Mark III. Imported awkwardness in a suit too big for its shoes. The 1963 Ford Zephyr 6 Mark III was meant to showcase British engineering under Ford's global umbrella. But when it arrived in American showrooms, briefly, awkwardly, it looked like a wallflower at a Detroit drag race. Its oversized chrome grille sat like a forced smile beneath wide-set headlights, and the body's proportions felt unbalanced. It was a car that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be elegant or utilitarian, and so it fell somewhere forgettable in between. Under the hood was a 2.6-liter inline six. Steering was vague, brakes inconsistent, and cornering felt like dragging a reluctant suitcase through gravel. Inside, the cabin tried to be upscale: fake wood trim, two-tone vinyl, and dashboard switches that felt like they belonged on a World War II bomber. The Zephyr 6 was never meant for American roads, and those roads never missed it. A British oddity briefly lost in the wrong market, forgotten as quickly as it arrived. 1966 Ford Anglia Super 123. This wasn't a car, it was a question. Why? The 1966 Ford Anglia Super 123E looked like a rolling contradiction. A tiny body with an exaggerated rear window, fins that pointed to nowhere, and a face that seemed to wince at its own reflection. Designed in the UK and shipped sparingly overseas, the Anglia was a compact car before compact meant clever. Its styling tried to be daring, but the result was more comedic than courageous. The reverse rake rear window, intended to keep raindrops off the glass, made rear visibility worse, not better. Under the hood was a meek 1.2-liter four-cylinder that felt like it was powered by sighs and apologies. Acceleration was measured in hours. Inside, it was cramped and cruel. Every tick of the engine echoed in your spine. The Anglia Super wasn't super. It was a relic of outdated thinking, desperately outclassed by Japanese compacts. 64 Ford Galaxy 500 hardtop, 6-cylinder. It looked like a beast until you turned the key. The 1964 Galaxy 500 hardtop, when ordered with the base 6-cylinder engine, was a betrayal sculpted in steel. It wore the body of a muscle car, but beneath the hood lived a tired commuter. A 223 cubic inch inline six that had no business powering something this bold. The design was stunning: sculpted flanks, a long, commanding stance, chrome details that caught the sun like a blade. From the outside, it promised glory. From the driver's seat, it offered regret. Performance was an illusion. You'd press the gas and the engine would hesitate, confused, like it forgot you were in a hurry. It sounded hollow. Inside, things weren't much better. It had the bones of a great cruiser, but corners were cut in base trim. Thin vinyl, minimal insulation, and a dashboard that rattled like a tin roof in a storm. The Galaxy name deserved better. This version wasn't a muscle car, it was a mirage. A heavy, breathless pretender wrapped in beautiful lies. 1967 Ford Cortina, Mark II 130 Deluxe. They called it Deluxe, but it was anything but. It was small, cheap, and unremarkable. A box with wheels designed to move people without moving emotion. The second-generation Cortina looked cleaner than its predecessor, but clean quickly turned into bland. Its squared-off body was devoid of character. The grille looked like a stencil. The taillights were postage stamps. Nothing excited. Nothing invited a second glance. And once you opened the door, it only got worse. The 1.3-liter engine coughed and strained, struggling to move the Cortina's modest weight with any dignity. Mated to a clunky 4-speed manual, it delivered frustration more than forward motion. Inside, it was stripped bare. Thin seats, harsh plastics, road noise seeped in like water through cracked glass. 1962 Ford Consul Classic. That's what the 1962 Ford Consul Classic felt like. A British-built Ford awkwardly offered to select overseas markets, including brief appearances in the US. It looked like someone had taken cues from 5 different cars and combined them into a mistake. The reverse-angle rear window was bold, but also bizarre. And the front grille? It was too small to be spacious, too heavy to be nimble, and too strange to be charming. Its 1.3-liter 4-cylinder engine produced a modest hum, but climb inside, and things only got worse. The dashboard had knobs in all the wrong places. The seat fabric felt like reconstituted burlap. Ventilation was an afterthought, and steering felt disconnected, like you were sending a message to the tires via telegram. Ford thought the Consul Classic could bring a touch of European flair to its lineup. What they brought instead was confusion on wheels. Even the public didn't know what to make of it. Sales fizzled. Enthusiasm never arrived. This wasn't a misunderstood gem. It was a misstep that reminded Ford not every global experiment deserves an export tag. 1960 Ford Galaxy Town Sedan. It had a name that spoke of stars, Galaxy. But the 1960 Town Sedan never reached orbit. It didn't even clear the launch pad. A visual compromise wrapped in too much chrome and too little innovation. It was Ford's desperate attempt to remain relevant at the dawn of a new decade, unsure whether they should stand tall or shrink away. The front grille was overly wide, like it was trying to smile through failure. And the roofline? Flat, uninspired, and unflattering. Beneath the hood sat an aging 223 6-cylinder, the kind of motor that didn't so much roar as mutter. Acceleration was sluggish. Handling was numb. You didn't drive this car, and you endured it. The interior felt like a rushed job. Door panels that flexed like cardboard. Ford had better things coming in the 60s. The Mustang, the Boss 302, but the Galaxy Town Sedan was a relic, not of greatness, but of mediocrity. It was a sedan that stood still while the world moved on. 1960 Ford Thunderbird convertible, base model. A convertible should feel like freedom, but the 1960 Ford Thunderbird base convertible felt like a weight around your neck. It was heavy, slow, and overstyled, a bloated land yacht that lost the sleek simplicity of its earlier lineage. Ford had transformed the Thunderbird from a lithe 2-seater into a 4-seater luxury cruiser, and in doing so, it traded charm for chrome. The long nose, the fins, the thick slab of metal trying to pass for elegance, it was a design overwhelmed by its own ambition. The base 352 V8 tried its best but labored under nearly 2 tons of steel. Acceleration was dull, braking was worse, best avoided. And with the top down, wind noise drowned out conversation, while the interior baked like an oven. 1969 Ford XL sports roof, the name said XL. The body screamed muscle, but under the surface, the 1969 Ford XL sports roof was little more than an aesthetic gamble gone wrong. It looked aggressive, that long, fastback roofline and commanding front end gave the illusion of motion, utter disappointment. Equipped with the base 351 V8, not a command. Steering was numb, cornering uncertain, and the suspension tuned more for highway float than spirited performance. Size worked against it in every possible way. Long overhangs meant poor visibility, and the turning radius could rival a cargo ship. Parallel parking became a test of patience. Inside, the story was the same flashy design, budget execution, and vinyl seats that looked luxurious in brochures but cracked under real-world use. The sports roof looked like a race car left in the sun too long. 962 Ford Taunus, 17M, straight from Germany, but lost in translation. The 1962 Ford Taunus 17M was Ford's attempt to bring continental flair to global markets. What they brought instead was a car nobody asked for, and even fewer wanted. The body was overstyled to the point of confusion, a bizarre blend of American tail fins. It looked like it couldn't decide which decade it was from. Under the hood, a 1.5-liter four-cylinder did its best, which wasn't nearly enough. Gauges in odd places, a gear shifter that wobbled like a tuning fork, and seat padding that disappeared after the first few miles. Even maintenance was a headache, parts were scarce, service complicated. Ford wanted the Taunus to be an international bridge, but it became an international punchline. A car with no place, no presence, and no purpose on American soil. 1961 Ford F-100 Unibody. The idea was bold, the execution, disastrous. The 1961 Ford F-100 Unibody pickup fused cab and bed into a single streamlined piece. It looked sleek, modern even, but the first pothole told the truth. This wasn't strength. It was structural compromise. With no separation between cab and bed, flex became a nightmare. Body panels cracked under routine loads. It was a pickup truck that couldn't be trusted to haul. The styling was clean, minimalist, and almost beautiful. Same inline-six or V8 as the standard F-Series, but the beauty didn't hide the bruises. Ford quietly returned to traditional bed-on-frame designs just 2 years later. The unibody experiment became a cautionary tale. Form means nothing if function suffers. This F-100 didn't fail because of looks, it failed because trucks aren't meant to bend. 1960 Ford Prefect 107E. Tiny, twitchy, and terribly outdated. The 1960 Ford Prefect 107E was a British Ford that somehow survived into the new decade, a relic clinging to the past. Its upright stance, narrow track, and pre-war design roots made it look like a lost time traveler parked beside modern machines. Its 1.2-liter four-cylinder was asthmatic, coughing its way to 60 miles per hour if you had the patience and a tailwind. The gearbox was a crash box setup with no synchro mesh on first gear. The ride was harsh, the steering heavy, mechanical drums that faded before you even needed them. Inside, it felt like sitting in a post office hard bench seats, a vertical dash, and rattling windows. A car better suited to 1940 than 1960, dragging its outdated engineering into a world that had already moved on. It wasn't a disgrace, but it was disgracefully late to leave the stage. 1968 Ford GT 40 MACD. 1968 Ford GT 40 MACD. The street-legal version of Ford's Le Mans Dominator, what should have been the ultimate performance icon, became a neutered shadow of its racing self. The body was stretched to fit luggage and real seats. The windshield raised for visibility. The powertrain softened for civilian use. Instead of raw brutality, it offered awkward refinement. Gone was the snarling 7-liter monster. The Mark III came with a 4.7-liter V8 tamer, quieter, slower. It was still loud, still hot, but no longer fast enough to forgive it. Only 7 were ever built, not because it was exclusive, but because no one wanted a tamed legend. The GT40 Marquis didn't roar, it sighed, and in doing so, betrayed the very DNA that made the original immortal. These weren't just missteps.